This is Autoline After Hours with John McElroy and Gary Vasilash, episode 556 for May 13th of 2021. The 21 new models and what we want to drive. Watch Autoline After Hours live at Autoline.tv every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 12 p.m. Pacific. You can subscribe to this podcast for free by searching for Autoline in iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey, and by Borg Warner, propulsion solutions that support a clean, energy-efficient world.
Hello, Gary.
John, good to see you.
Good to be here.
Boy, I'll tell you, if anybody had any doubt about the significance of the auto industry to the nation, it had to have stopped this week. I mean, first we had the consumer price index come out and it was up 4.2%, which was like, people are like, ah! But, the real finding was used car prices were up 10%. That was the highest increase of any category, the highest that the Bureau of Labor Statistics has seen since it started tracking this in 1953. And then, we've all seen on TV the lines of cars at gas stations because of the Colonial Pipeline. I mean, it's all about autos.
Yeah. A cyber attack, of course, at the heart of the long gas lines, shutting down that pipeline. And you're right about inflation. In fact, not only were used car prices up 10%, they accounted for 1/3 of the total increase in inflation. So you're right. I mean, it just shows how much of an impact the auto industry can have on the total U.S. economy or any
Absolutely.
other economy of countries with their own car industry.
Sure. All right. So I've got a quiz for you.
Oh man, I've had a bad batting average here.
All right, so this one, you do really, really good on the old ones. You do not so good on the new ones. So this is 35 years. So I think that this is sort of a medium one. Okay. So on this day in 1986, an 87 model year vehicle was introduced. It was a new nameplate. And I would argue that this nameplate, which still exists, is one of the most significant cars that's out there. And I use cars broadly.
Broadly. Okay. 1986, a new nameplate. Well, because the way you were going, I was thinking, ooh, maybe it's Lexus, maybe it's Saturn, maybe it's Acura or Infiniti, but I don't think it's any of those.
You are correct.
And so you just exhausted my instant guesses.
So in 1986, the Jeep CJ was replaced by the Wrangler.
Oh, no kidding. Wow. Yeah. Wow. That is a significant introduction of a nameplate and still going strong. Yeah.
I think it's a very important vehicle for, and I think that the people at Stellantis think so too, but just saying.
Right. That's exactly right.
All right, we should begin this show. This is a very special show that we haven't done one of these. I can't remember when. That we're just going to talk all about new cars. All
new cars that are out this year or are going to come out later this year as well. So right. Yeah, I can't wait to get into it. Why don't you introduce the two guests that we're bringing on the show?
Well, first of all, we've got Jenny Newman, who's the editor-in-chief of Cars.com.
Hello there, Jenny.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Great to have you.
Couldn't possibly have anybody better. I mean, Cars.com, to talk about vehicles.
Absolutely. We have a 10-person editorial department, and this is what we love to do. So yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Great. And not to diminish his knowledge, capabilities, and thoroughness in understanding the auto industry, I'd like to bring in Gary Witzenberg.
Good morning, Gary.
How are you?
And Jenny.
Yeah.
Of course, you say good morning because unlike
it's morning
us,
where I am. Yes.
Yes.
Sorry. Good afternoon.
And so we got to be careful here, Jenny, because we got two Garys on the show. So we're going to have to talk about Gary V and Gary W.
I'll do my best.
Or you just ignore us, and that would be easier. But all right, so what I'd like to do is sort of walk through. I mean, we could almost alphabetically, because we could go from Acura to Volvo, right? I mean, so I mean, I'll just throw some nameplates out there, and then you guys chime in as to what you think about these new vehicles. And then if there are vehicles that I haven't talked about that you want to talk about, let's talk about those vehicles, right? Okay, easy enough. All right, so to start with Acura, so they had two vehicles that will be introduced this year, the Acura MDX and the Acura TLX Type S. So who wants to grab either or both of those cars? Not all at once.
I can talk a little bit about the MDX, although I've not yet been in it. So, I mean, talk about looking forward and getting excited about what's coming out later this year. The MDX is a 3-row SUV that is just basically built off of the Pilot, the Honda Pilot, right? And we know that that is really popular with families looking for a little more luxury in their life, but maybe not too much luxury. So it'll be interesting to see what Acura does with it. You know, I know that from Honda does really well when it comes to considering how families use their vehicles. So I expect to see the MDX really shine when it comes to family usage.
Well, as we know, it's on an all-new rigid platform, more rigid than before, and it's got double wishbone front suspension, that's new, and a multi-link rear. It's also got a couple of engine choices. There's a 3.5 liter 290 horsepower standard engine, and then there's a 3.0 liter turbo, both V6s. So I don't see a 4-cylinder available. Those both drive through a 4-speed automatic. And I guess I haven't been in it yet either, but my only negative on Acura's more recently is the touch face infotainment interface, which I find very difficult and frustrating to use.
Yeah, Gary, you're
agree with
talking
that.
about that sort of little scratch pad or joystick kind of way of doing it, right?
Right. Well, they have it so if you touch the touchpad on the console, not the touch screen, and it corresponds exactly to that position on the screen, and that's a good thing. But there's a real learning curve. When I got in the ones I've driven in the last couple of years, I've gotten more familiar with them and more comfortable with them over time in a vehicle, but it's not intuitive. You have to have an instruction manual in front of you the first time you use it, I think. And it's just not among the best. I mean, to me, we can talk about this all day long, but infotainment is a really good touchscreen with big icons that you can hit even when the vehicle's moving up and down, and a couple of knobs and maybe about a half a dozen hard buttons that go from one major function to another. And a lot of vehicles have those, but the ones who try to go beyond that to something more high-tech technically make it less easy.
Yeah, I concur completely with that. It's easy to overshoot what you want with that scratch pad kind of approach. Lexus has the same problem, I would say, as well. It has sort of a joystick, but it's easy to overshoot with that as well. And I'll just keep my remarks on the MDX quick because I know we got a lot to talk about here today, but they keep getting better and better with this vehicle. What I like about it is it's pretty responsive. You know, Jenny, as you mentioned, it's 3 rows, so it's going to be more family friendly from that standpoint. But if you enjoy getting out and driving, this car's got an edge to it that I think enthusiasts would like, even though it's a crossover aimed at families. And it doesn't have the goofy styling that they had a couple of generations ago. They've got this thing much better resolved from a styling standpoint.
Right.
So I would quickly say you guys are all wrong about the true touchpad interface. It's magnificent. and in terms of the styling, I would say that, John, you're right on this. I mean, it's difficult, I believe, to style a crossover utility because they all pretty much look the same, or they just look awful. This one looks great. They've got edginess. They've done a great job in folding that sheet metal, and I give it full marks on that. And Jenny, to your point about the third row, yeah, and it's a third row people can actually use that, aren't this big. So
Right.
that's a good thing. Okay, anybody have anything on the Type S TLX?
I've not been in that one.
I haven't been in it yet either.
I haven't been in that one. Now I think we've all been in the normal TLX, and this is just an enhanced version of that vehicle with a 355 horsepower engine, 10-speed automatic transmission. But here's a question. So why are they still making cars as in terms of cars?
Well, because a lot of people still want cars. Not everybody wants an SUV or a crossover or a pickup truck. And in my opinion, I think the domestics, all three of them pretty much, have been perhaps premature in abandoning cars. At least I think every major maker ought to have at least a compact size and a mid-size passenger car. And most of the imports, as we call them, or the foreign-based companies still do. Most of the domestics don't. I'm not even sure. Malibu was the last holdout, wasn't it, at GM? Is that still around?
Yes.
for now? Yes,
Okay.
but that's coming. Isn't that coming to an end? The production's come. Might be the last model year for Malibu.
I think it might be.
All
And I
things must
understand,
pass.
sales of those vehicles have dropped precipitously as almost everyone is moving into other types of vehicles, but they're not going away, I don't think, and they may come back due to gas prices or just people get tired of the other and come back. And so
Mhm.
I think it's a little foolish and maybe premature to totally abandon passenger cars, as many brands have.
Speaking of which, we're going to move on to the letter B, which would be Buick, which has an all SUV lineup. And this year, they're introducing a new Envision. So it's a compact SUV. Anybody?
I got to spend
Very-
just a little time with it. I thought it was really good looking, just quietly stunning. And I was a little surprised by that because sometimes I find the Buicks beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? So grain of salt this, but some of the other Buicks didn't really stand out, and this one finally did. So yeah, that was kind of nice to see coming from Buick.
Agree on that. I have spent some time in that vehicle and I found it really, really nice in almost every way. At the risk of being Mr. Negative, I do have a problem with that and other GM vehicles recently, and that's their lane keeping system is just really bad. It wanders to one side, then to the other side, then back to the other side. It ping pongs back and forth, and almost every other vehicle I get into does a better job of that, of keeping you more or less centered in the lane. I think that's something they need to get competitive on pretty quickly. I think that affected the large SUVs last year as well. The Suburban, even the Escalade. Just when you're short of their Pro Pilot, they just don't do a good job of that particular driver aid.
Yeah, I think Pro Pilot is the name that Nissan uses.
Right.
But
Super Cruise.
nonetheless,
Super Cruise.
Yeah,
Right.
what I found interesting about the Envision, I totally agree with you, Jenny. I thought from a styling standpoint, the proportions on that vehicle are extremely well done. The other thing that I was so keen to get into it for, of course, is it's made in China. It's one of, I think, only 2 vehicles you can buy in the American market that's made in China. And I'm kind of surprised that GM continues to import it because there's now a 27.5% import tariff if you bring any Chinese-made vehicle into the United States. So somehow or other, GM's figuring out how to eat that cost, and maybe it's got to do with transfer pricing between different entities within GM. But I wanted to get into it because it's Chinese-made. And I got to tell you, the fit and finish, both inside and outside, the panel gaps, the paint quality, were absolutely world-class. And that's what I was really looking for, to see how well built it was. And then just one minor thing that I really appreciated is if you sit in the second row rear seat, there's a very deep floor. So you get good thigh support, or reasonably good thigh support as a result. In so many of these crossovers, you're sitting on your tailbone because the floor is, the seat is low, the floor is high. So your knees are up and you're sitting on your tailbone. And if you spend any time in the back seat, it tends to be a tiring seating position. So kudos to them. Somehow they figured out how to get the floor very low, and that gave you better thigh support.
I'll only add a question here. Okay, so John, you mentioned this vehicle's made in China. You mentioned that there is meticulous attention paid inside and out in terms of gaps, materials, and so on and so forth. As is well known, many Chinese vehicles are driven by drivers and people are sitting in the back seat. Do you think that perhaps this attention to the back seat may be because of that?
Maybe. You know, I would say 10 years ago, Gary, that was absolutely the case. Chinese, driving was new to them. And certainly in the luxury segment or the premium segment, having a driver was very common. I don't think that's as common anymore. I mean, you know, the last time I was in China a few years ago for the Beijing Auto Show, I mean, the traffic was incredible. I described it as rivers of steel flowing into the city. And there weren't any chauffeurs. Those were everyday Chinese driving those cars.
Regarding the why do they still make it in China? First of all, it's not an easy thing to move production of a vehicle from one country to another. Obviously, they would have to have capacity, but also the whole supplier base is set up to provide the parts that they need there. That would be a major change. I'd be surprised if they weren't contemplating it, though, for the reason you mentioned. We may see that move sometime in the not too distant future. And one other thing about that, being made in China, we think of Chinese cars as still not up to worldwide quality standards, but that is the GM production system that, like Toyotas and others around the world, it doesn't really matter too much where it's located. It's done exactly the same way everywhere in the world where they build cars. So I think that's not an issue. Made in China is not going to be a quality issue, as you pointed out.
Okay, so before moving on to the C's, I need to point out that one of our viewers, our friend Andy Boyd, chimes in about the true touchpad, saying you can't overshoot it because it's one-to-one mapped with the screen. So there you go. So
in the
Andy
Acura.
Yes.
Yes.
And Andy just wanted us to know that because I know
Thank
that
you,
people
Andy.
are concerned about that and just keeping the truth valid here. All right. We did a whole show on this, I believe. It was the Cadillac CTS 5V Blackwing and the CT4V Blackwing. Okay, high performance vehicles from Cadillac. Two cars that they still have in their lineup. The first, the CT5V Blackwing, that's a big long name, has a 6.2 liter supercharged V8 that puts out 668 horsepower. The CT4V Blackwing has a 3.6 liter twin turbo V6 that puts out 472 horsepower. And both of those vehicles go like the proverbial bats out of hell. What do you guys think about those cars?
Haven't been
I
in
haven't
either,
been in
but the CT4 and CT5 to me are very good cars in almost every way. So these are just more powerful, better handling, high performance versions that I'm sure are future collector's items because they won't sell a whole lot of them. And I guess when we say GM's abandoned passenger cars, we should have mentioned those and Camaro and a few others, but I'm sure they're terrific. I look forward to getting in those cars.
Yeah, that's
me
all I can
too.
say too. I can't wait to get in them.
Jenny, what do you think about the whole notion of these cars?
I'm just glad they're doing them. I'm
Not
glad there's
you,
still
Jenny.
some vehicles out there. Sorry.
Gary's really glad that they're doing them. I mean, I think it's exciting. We see a lot of high performance vehicles still coming out. We recently over at cars.com had the Durango Srt. There's a lot of love for being able to go fast and feeling that power. But with gas prices rising, there's also the downside to it, right? When you have these extremely powerful engines, they're also really thirsty. And so, you might be getting 11 miles to the gallon. And that's hard to handle if you're using it as a daily driver, as well as it's something that you want to have a little fun in. So I don't know. I think there's limited audience for these vehicles. Lots of dreaming, not a lot of buying.
All right. So moving on to something that is truly thrifty in the C's, the Chevy Bolt EUV. Okay, so it is the what they claim is the utility version of the Bolt EV. Now, I'm sure, John, I know you've been in that car.
One thing that I've noticed.
No, actually, I have not been in that car.
All right, Gary, I know you've been in that car, nor John. You haven't been in that
No,
car?
I have not.
Jenny?
I've been in the Bolt, not the EUV.
We had one of our Detroit writers in it. He loved it. He loved it so much he's put money down on one.
Really?
So, you know,
Really?
yeah. He's an EV owner though, and he leases a Bolt EV, so he was looking for a replacement. So, but he walked away from that very small drive event really, really impressed. And you know that I'm certainly excited to get my hands on it. Let's hope soon. That's gotta be coming out.
Gary, I know Gary Vasilash. I know you drove it, so you tell us what you think about it.
When I drove it, I was very impressed with the vehicle. Okay. I think that, you know, they've done a superlative job in terms of that execution of the powertrain. It's got Super Cruise available in it, which is really surprising. So I think that this is, you know, General Motors, until they roll out their Ultium products, Ultium-based products, this is what they have. So I think that they want to draw attention to the fact that, you know, even when you're getting in a vehicle that's going to cost you south of 40 grand, that it has some you know, Cadillac technology in it. The thing that I'm not really crazy about is the fact that, you know, if you have something that is a utility vehicle, you think that it might have more utility than a non-utility vehicle. And as it turns out, the Bolt EUV actually has less cargo capacity than the Bolt EV, which, you know, I'm not so thrilled about that. So, okay, they're trying.
But it's cooler and looks a little cooler because it's taller. Looks like a crossover.
Right.
I wanted to say two quick significant things about that jump out at me. One is that they talking about a changeable plug, so you can change the end of the plug to plug into either 110 or 240. And also, if I understand this correctly, with the $34,000 base price, you do get a free installation of a 240 charger in your home if you're eligible. If you're not in an apartment or someplace where you can put that goes along with it. That's a pretty good deal.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, I would add, I expect this thing to really help Bolt sales. Mm-hmm. You know, I want to say I'm going by memory here. Not a good thing in my case, but they sold around 20,000 of them last year in the U.S. market. I wouldn't be surprised to see a 50% jump to 30,000 of both models. And that's still not big volume, but a 50% increase, if I'm right, would be a significant change for them.
Well, and I love the idea of taking the difficulty out of the charging side of it, right? So adding that into the buying experience is a really great way to handle that, because a lot of people are excited about EVs, but they're not committing yet, and so this might help seal the deal.
Mm-hmm.
And that 240 volt charger installation is not inexpensive. For most people, that's a pretty big hit over and above the vehicle price itself.
Right. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the Fs, and Ford has a plethora. This is the first time I've ever used that word on the show. Plethora of new vehicles. And
good word.
And okay, I just want to mention this, and I just think this is the best title of anything in the auto industry. In the Bronco that will be coming out, there is the high capability Sasquatch package. Okay, that is just genius. Okay, Sasquatch package. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about that car. They also have the F-150 Raptor. We did a show on that. The E-Transit van, the Mustang Mach-1. So who wants to pick up on any of these vehicles? I know you'll all want to talk about the Sasquatch package, but just move on from that.
Isn't the Sasquatch never been found or seen? It's a mythical creature, perhaps.
That's a very good point. But I think what they did was, so when you get the Sasquatch package, it basically provides class-leading approach and departure angles, so you're able to get off-road to try to find that wily creature.
I was just going to say, enables you to go try to find it. Exactly.
That's right.
Well, this, the Bronco's a hugely important vehicle for Ford. The amount of headlines they've gotten out of it are just mind-boggling to me. I'm amazed too at how many Bronco Sports that I see driving around. It's been a pretty good seller. And, it's not getting near the attention that the Bronco is going to get. And remember, that's made at the Michigan Assembly Plant for Ford, which used to build Focuses and C-Maxes, now builds the Ranger. They're going to add the Bronco. Ford's talking about $1 billion swing in just that one plant, dropping those cars and going to those the truck and the Bronco. So, I mean, hugely important. I can't wait to get in the thing. And take it on some serious off-road tracks as well.
Do you think Ford has a slight issue though with Bronco and Bronco Sport? Because I'm seeing a lot of comments online that people don't realize that these are two different vehicles and two different sizes. So, does there need to be more education of consumers? Is this just everyone's so excited about the Bronco that they don't even realize there are two vehicles out there? There just seems to be a little disconnect there.
Well, I can tell you for a fact, the people who are waiting for the Bronco to come out, there's no confusion with them at all. They are not interested in the Sport. They want the Bronco.
Well, this is the Ford Wrangler with the extreme capabilities. Even though the Sport has very good capabilities, it's escape-based, it's front drive nominally, and you can add all-wheel drive, I think. And it's a step below in terms of capability, which is fine for a lot of buyers. But as you say, John, a lot of people are waiting for the Wrangler beater or competitor at least.
All right. So just to be fair to our friends at Ford, I believe the Bronco Sport, all of them come with four-wheel
standard
drive.
all-wheel drive.
Yes. Okay. So that's there. The new Bronco is on its own platform, the T6 architecture, with box sections to make this thing. The thing is, as I was reading about the Bronco and looking into this, what really occurred to me is that Ford is looking at the guys at Jeep and saying, you know what? Let's add more. Let's add something they don't have. And I mean, and and then at some point, I think they just started like shoveling it in. I mean, they're just like, it's just like remarkable to me, all the stuff that you can get on these vehicles, including the Sasquatch package, by the way.
Well, Jeep's just going to come back at them. So,
that's right.
This is going to be gold for anybody who loves off-roading, or at least the idea of off-roading. So give it another year and Jeep's going to come back bigger and better.
See, but I sort of wonder about that. I mean, if it, and we'll jump ahead to the J's here. I mean, so we've seen the Grand Wagoneer, I mean, which is, a luxurious vehicle, which they claim has Jeep capabilities, and I'm sure it does. But my question is if you have this beautiful thing, are you going to take it somewhere and beat the hell out of it? Versus if you have a Bronco, you're going to take it and beat the hell out of it seriously in your search for mythical creatures?
No, but you have to have that off-road capability for the Wagoneer to have street cred or off-road cred in this case. Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing with Land Rover. 99% of the people who buy Land Rovers never take them off hardcore off-roading. But the image that it could do that is what helps you justify paying the premium that you pay for it. And that's what's, I think, so significant about the Grand Wagoneer is this is going to allow Jeep to go farther upscale than it's ever gone before and really start to go after Land Rover from that standpoint.
All right, so let's move on to another Ford vehicle, the F-150 Raptor. Gary, I know you want to talk about this vehicle.
Not especially, but only because, well, we know it follows in the tracks of the previous Raptors, which are basically high-performance, off-road, racing-oriented versions of the F-150. We now have a couple others out there, Ram TRX and almost Jeep Gladiator Mojave. Is it a new vehicle? We've debated this back and forth. Should it be up for a NACTOY award? We think possibly. Because it's new enough, it's substantially different enough that it probably should be on that list, which is a short list of new trucks anyway, although longer this year than usual. So yeah, I'm interested in getting in. I'm not an off-road kind of guy, but I'm interested in getting in that. I think the one thing I'll end with this: they are already being criticized for not having anywhere near the horsepower that the TRX does, and maybe they'll step up and provide that, or maybe they feel that what they have with their EcoBoost V6 is plenty for most Raptor buyers.
Okay, and what I think is perhaps the most significant Ford introduction of the lot, we haven't even talked about the Mustang Mach 1, I'm sorry, Mach 1, is the E-Transit van. Now, I think this is really something, because here's Ford saying, okay, the commercial business is where we're going to have big volumes of electric vehicles just because it makes sense in those applications. And for them to be out there right away doing this, I think this is just a brilliant move. Anybody else agree with me?
Is that coming out this year, the E-Transit?
Yes.
Okay. There's a couple of others. I see we've got a comment here, and I'm going to murder his last name, but Stefan Frontier says, forget the Raptor, get onto the Lightning.
It's not being introduced this year.
But it's not coming out this year, Stefan. That's why we're not getting to that right now. But I'll tell you another one from Ford that's been under the radar, and I can't believe it hasn't gotten the attention that it deserves, because it is coming out this year, and that's the Ford Maverick. And maybe we can couple that talking with the Hyundai Santa Cruz as well. But, you know, Ford's coming out with a smaller pickup. It's going to be around $20,000. It, too, is going to be based on the Ford Escape platform. And, you know, at 20 grand, it's going to be substantially cheaper than the cheapest F-150 that you can buy. And Ford's going after an entirely new customer. They don't expect F-150 buyers to come into this. They're planning on pulling people out of small crossovers and the like to come into it. And that's one vehicle I cannot wait to drive along with the Santa Cruz.
All right, but we gotta be clear here. This is sort of like a Sasquatch. This has not been introduced yet, so we don't know these details to be absolutely certain. Now, Jenny, you might know.
I don't know yet, but I think it's really smart of Ford to move in that direction, right? Just like we've seen a lot of other automakers move into subcompact SUVs. That's a class that's exploded. And we know that, you know, especially coming out, well, we're still in the pandemic, right? So in the pandemic and hopefully coming out of it, we're seeing a lot of shoppers looking for value vehicles. So they're looking for cars that are $25,000 and less. And this is really smart of Ford to kind of go after that with a truck, because people cross shop between SUVs and trucks all the time. So why not, you know, get another slice of the pie a little further down the bracket.
Hey, I know we've got a lot more to talk about, and we sure do, but we got to take a quick commercial break right now. Back in just a jiffy. All right, we're back. Where are you taking us, Gary Vasilash?
All right, so you guys didn't chime in on that E-Transit. I'm disappointed, but we'll move on. Okay. So,
No, we can talk E-Transit.
No. I want to pick up on what Jenny was saying about people who are interested in buying vehicles that cost, what did you say, less than $25,000?
Yeah, especially you're seeing a lot of shoppers looking for shopping at, you know, value price points, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of good new cars out there that can check that box. But yeah, I mean, if you're looking to expand your bottom line, get more money in for your
Mm-hmm.
company, that's a great way to go.
Okay, so we're gonna make this. This is the classic segue. Okay, so we've been talking about pickup trucks, and we're talking about getting more money to the bottom line. So I want to talk about a vehicle that's being introduced this year that has the opening base price of $112,595, the Hummer EV pickup. Gary Witzenberg, tell us about this vehicle.
As if I'm an expert on it already.
You're an expert on it. You're an expert on everything.
I know little about it, except it's all electric. It's a Pioneer. in all electric pickups, at least from major makers. And as you say, they're coming out with the top of the line, most expensive, most powerful, biggest battery, fastest version of it first, to be followed by a couple other versions down the road.
Yeah, so you can wait until next fall and get one for $99,995.
Yeah.
But okay, so it's 1,000 horsepower, 11,500 foot-pounds of torque, 0 to 60 in 3 seconds, and a range of 350 miles plus, and you can have 800-volt fast charging up to 100 miles in 10 minutes. What else do you need?
Bananas.
I think you need to wait a bit longer, Gary. I don't think that's coming out this year.
No,
It is. It is.
It
They have
is?
said it'll be in production by the end of the year, and hopefully at dealers before the end of the calendar year.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's the
Just that first
SUVs
version.
later.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Gotcha.
I wanted to get back to the Maverick for a minute, though. Is that really coming out this calendar year?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is it?
Yep.
And it's unibody, like a Ridgeline or a Santa Cruz,
Yes, it is.
based on a crossover. Oh,
Right.
okay. That's news to me, but I'm glad you brought it up.
Jenny, you want to chime in on this Hummer EV? No.
I did amazing.
You know, this
I
is
think
Immerse yourself in it. I mean, oh my God, 1,000 horsepower. It's well, I think we need to see. It needs to be tested, right? You need automotive journalists to drive this and really put it through its paces to see just what its capabilities truly are. That's a lot of really big numbers.
See,
I
I think the move is brilliant on GM's part. GM has got to smash the image that it's an old, traditional, lethargic company and is making the transition into the electric world. Coming out with a vehicle which, again, has got a brand name on it that used to represent the biggest and the baddest and the worst of SUVs, at least in the minds of environmentalists. And so they're smashing a couple of paradigms all at once. And you know, they've got to create a lot of buzz, a lot of attention to use this as the spearhead for their transition. You know, the Bolt, whether they did the EUV version of it or not, that didn't work. They need to do something that creates a big splash, and this vehicle's already doing it before it's even hit the showroom.
I think it's brilliant that they have put that Hummer brand on it, and that it is also a sub-brand under GMC. All of that makes great sense to me.
You know, plus it's got that clever GMC tailgate. I know that this is being overlooked by 1,000 horsepower and stuff like that, but I just want you to.
Does it really? Okay. One more thing I didn't know.
Let's be real about, you know, this is a pickup truck, for God's sake.
Right.
All right. Moving to the H's, this is certainly an important vehicle by any measure. The 11th generation Civic sedan will be introduced this year. And I look at this thing and it's like Honda is saying, you know what? Let's go back to what made us Honda. I mean, if you ever sat in a Honda from years back, you know, you weren't dazzled by screens on top of screens and cockpits and all of this sort of thing. You got into the vehicle, you had great sight lines all around. You had, you know, like a low belt line, good performance, you know, without being 1,000 horsepower, obviously. I mean, it was just like the quintessential car. And I think that they strayed from that. And I get this sense that the 11th generation, they're going to go back to, you know, you meet the nicest people in a Honda. What do you guys think?
I think you're right. I think you're very right. And then I you know, that last generation didn't do so well. So this one really needs to be a hit. So, you know, this redesign is going to be really important for Honda, I think.
Yeah, it's a really nice restyle. I think a lot of people did not care for the previous generation just from the exterior design of it. It didn't bother me as much, but didn't do as well. And I think what we've seen pictures of the new one, it looks terrific. And it's also, they say, got more power and better handling and ride. So they've improved, you know, those areas of it. I only question, apparently the only engine, at least initially, is a 1.5 liter turbo.
There's a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine as well as a 1.5 liter turbo. So there'll be 2 engines.
A base non-turbo?
Correct. And,
Yeah,
the turbo, interestingly enough, produces 180 horsepower and uses regular. Sometimes you get into a turbo and you need to put in premium.
Yeah.
So again, very Honda-like. Okay, we're gonna provide you with a car that you just go to the gas station and put in 87. Don't worry about the 91.
Yeah, this is a car I can't wait to get in. This is, of everything that we've been talking about, like the Bronco. It's one I'm dying to get into. And Gary Vasilash, to your point, I think that's so important. I really want to see Honda get back to the original basics of the car. Every model of every car company goes through the same thing, generation to generation to generation. They ask their customers, what do you want? And they go, I'd like a little more headroom. And then somebody says, I'd like a little more shoulder room. And I wish the trunk was bigger. Or I wish it was a little faster and blah, blah, blah. And the next thing you know, a Civic is the size of what an Accord used to be. So I'm hoping they do get back to the basics and that it's true to the roots of what that brand was always about.
All right, well, we're going to move on to another H, Hyundai. Now, here's a company that, I mean, they just keep rolling out multiples. I mean, they just put out so many vehicles, and they're really nice looking, and they have lots of technology. So Hyundai's got the Ioniq 5, a mid-size crossover, which, oh, by the way, is electric. They've got a new Tucson, which you can get with an internal combustion engine, or a plug-in hybrid version, or a regular hybrid version. And what else do I have? Oh, and the aforementioned Santa Cruz, what they're describing as a sport adventure vehicle. Not as good as Sasquatch package, but they're trying. And this has a little diminutive box, a 48.4 inch bed on the back. So let's walk through these. The Ioniq 5 crossover electric. Jenny wants to say something.
Well, the debut is coming out in a matter of days. And so it's just really exciting. You try not to have favorites. It's kind of like you don't want to have favorite children. And as an automotive journalist, you don't want to have favorite vehicles or car or brands, but I really like what Hyundai has been doing. I think, they really knocked it out of the park with the Palisade. The Elantra last year was incredibly impressive. And the Sonata too, right? And now we're seeing what they're going to do when it comes to EVs. So, my expectations are really high, and I guess we'll see what they end up doing. It's but yeah, just days away before we really get to see it.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure you will, Gary, but the Santa Cruz is basically a Tucson with a box, is it not? It's and that's not a negative. It's just another use of that platform and most of that body, I think, and probably all of the powertrain.
I cannot confirm that. I can't correct you.
I think that's true, but they're not exactly creating a new category, because I think Ridgeline was there a long time ago, and there have been others. Subaru Brat comes to mind.
John, tell us about why this is not a good vehicle, John.
Well, this is one thing that I've been on, and I could be proven wrong in it. We'll see. But, small pickups with small beds traditionally have not done well. The Ridgeline is a little bit different, Gary Witzenberg, in that it's much larger than the Santa Cruz or what the Maverick's going to be. But, I'm a guy who's got a mountain bike. I got cross-country skis and the like. They don't fit in the back of in the bed of these smaller pickups. With a crossover, maybe of the same footprint size, you can fold down the middle row seat, and you can throw all that stuff into the back of a vehicle. So I know they're being promoted as a active lifestyle kind of vehicle, not a work pickup truck, but we'll see how well that works. And, I didn't realize this before. An automaker cannot legally put a bed extender on a vehicle. They've got to leave that to the aftermarket. There's some FMVSS crash standard kind of stuff that I don't know the particulars of, but I think it was, I shouldn't even say, because I don't remember exactly who told me this, but they said automakers cannot do bed extenders. So maybe you can fix the issue that I'm talking about with a bed extender on the back of it. But to your point, Gary Witzenberg, They have to build this vehicle in the United States. Otherwise, they're going to get hit with a 25% import tariff if they try to import it, because all trucks get hit with that. So yeah, if Hyundai is going to build it in the US, it makes sense to build it off a platform that they've already got here.
Anybody want to talk about the Tucson?
Got one coming.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of days. I've been reading really good things about it, that this is a giant leap forward in the compact SUV class. And so I think that's the big question, you know,
Really,
is it going to
really nice vehicle. I attended a program for that a few weeks last week in almost every way. The only exception is the base engine seems a little underpowered. It's got an optional turbo engine that's much better. But if you have, you know, we were driving it alone, one person, no load, and it didn't do well passing on a 2-lane, for example, when you're already going fairly quickly. I don't know if that'll be a big issue for them or not, but that's about the only thing I can criticize about it.
And just to be clear here for the audience to know, Gary Witzenberg actually races cars. So when he says something's underpowered, we got to put that into.
And Gary Vasilash, I'd add one more thing to your point. Hyundai is on a roll. My gosh, the cadence of product that they've got coming is unrelenting. And Nissan better look over its shoulder, because last month, Hyundai came within 10,000 units of catching up to Nissan. And with, you know, things like the new Tucson, the Santa Cruz gets into a whole new category. Nissan's in danger of seeing Hyundai go past it this year, at least in the U.S. market. And that would be, you know, a real shocker. And hey, one more thing I got to say before we go on to the next categories there, we got to take another quick commercial break. We'll be back in just a moment.
The world is changing at an ever-increasing pace. No matter what the mode of transportation, there is always the need for an efficient propulsion system. And that's exactly what BorgWarner has been doing since the earliest days of the automotive industry. We create innovative mobility technologies that reduce energy consumption and emissions while improving performance. Our proven track record has made us an industry leader in forward-looking propulsion solutions for combustion, hybrid, and electric vehicles.
Can I add Tucson real quick? The turbo engine I mentioned, I should point out, it's a 1.6 liter, and it's not available alone. It is part of the hybrid package, and that hybrid Tucson is quicker, more fun in just about every way. It even has something called e-handling, which helps the cornering, and it was a very impressive vehicle. Obviously more pricey, but also more fuel efficient.
Hey, Gary, how does that compare to like the CRV hybrid or the RAV4 hybrid, would you say? Have you driven those?
Not recently, but in what way?
Well, if it's quicker, right? The CRV hybrid is a little slow. You know, is it, so do you think it's better than the two hybrids that are already in that category? Or, you know, do you think it just competes? Like, does it compete?
I think well, I was comparing it to the base engine Tucson, not to the competition, but it was an extremely surprisingly fun vehicle to drive, the hybrid version, where the regular version was just pretty nice. I'd have to drive the three you mentioned back to back to tell you which is better or quicker or faster. Most customers aren't going to care. You know, if it's 0 to 60 in 6.2 or 6.5, doesn't make a whole lot of difference. But it was an impressive vehicle to drive just from a dynamic and performance standpoint as a hybrid.
Okay, so we're moving on to eyes. We'll get to Nissan, but we'll get to the luxury brand of Nissan. There's going to be the Infinity QX60, which is another crossover. So, you know, you talk about brands that are really trying to make something of themselves, and boy, I just, you know, Infinity's making some good vehicles and just not getting a whole lot of love in the market. Do any of you know anything about the QX60 or any comment on Infinity's issues?
I've got the QX55 right now, and it's a really good looking sort of coupe SUV, which I generally not a fan of the way those look. So it does look good. You know, there's a lot of luxury. It just feels like, yeah, you're right, Gary. Infinity is not really in the consideration set right now, and I'm not sure why, because they're plenty fun to drive. You know, they're very luxurious on the inside. They've got they're ticking all the boxes, but why aren't they making it with consumers? That is a good question.
My expectations are high for that vehicle, but again, as you say, most people don't know it exists, or if they do, it's way down the list after some German cars and Lexus and maybe even Cadillac as a brand.
John McElroy.
I would echo what Jenny just had to say about the QX55. Very good looking vehicle. But all I can tell you is I've seen pictures of the QX60, and that's about as much as I know about it. Also a good looking vehicle, at least in the photos.
Okay, we talked a little, so going to Jay, we talked a little bit about the Jeep, the Wagoneer and the Grand Wagoneer. There'll also be the Grand Cherokee L, so a Grand Cherokee with 3 rows. So does the world need 3 rows in a Grand Cherokee?
It's all about sales. You know, it's you'd be surprised how many people think, oh, geez, where am I going to stick the kids? And so I need 3 rows. And all the data shows that third row almost never gets used. My curiosity is that the cadence, the timing of Jeep's product rollout. Why are you coming out with a Grand Cherokee long wheelbase at the same time you're coming out with a Grand Wagoneer? I mean, they should have been at least a year apart. The Grand Cherokee should have probably been out a year or 2 ago. So I think they're hurting themselves, even though I'll bet both vehicles are terrific. They're going to be knocking heads a little bit in the marketplace.
The Grand Cherokee is one of the few vehicles, one of the few 2-row SUVs that actually legitimately fits 3 adults in the back seat or 3 car seats, right? So it's got a really roomy back seat, and I just have a lot of doubt that third row is going to be anything that anyone, even young children, can sit back there very comfortably. It's going to, legroom's going to be an issue. So I question it as well.
Yeah. Isn't there a pretty substantial size and price differential, though, between even Grand Wagoneer L and, Grand Cherokee L and Grand Wagoneer? The Grand Wagoneer, I think, is going up against things like Suburbans and even Escalade. And that's a whole step above, I think. I guess what I'm saying is I understand and agree with you on the cadence, but maybe they don't really compete with each other as much as we might think because of price and size and so on.
Well, but there is a Wagoneer without the Grand.
Yeah.
So I think that's what John was talking about.
But it's still a larger, more expensive vehicle than a Grand Cherokee, isn't it?
Ish.
Yeah.
It's very close.
I mean, there's a ladder of vehicles, and that's the very top for them.
All right, so we're not even halfway through the alphabet yet, so we'll be quick. Karma GS6, Gary Witzenberg, you love that car. Tell us why.
Gary, I have no clue about that car, except it used to be the Fisker, and it's a series hybrid. It goes back to GM or Chevy Volt in a way, and that's about all I know. It's good looking, most people would say. It's a niche maker. I don't give many niche makers much capability of lasting very long, and this may be in that category. I did drive a Fisker once briefly, and I think it's a similar powertrain, a 4-cylinder engine that generates electricity, and the thing runs on electricity, kind of like a big fancy looking Chevy Volt. That's about all I know.
All right, we'll move on from that one. So we'll go to a niche maker. We did a whole show on this niche maker. Lucid will be coming out with the Air. 406 miles of projected range, 480 horsepower, $77,400 will get you in one of these vehicles before the rebates. Jenny, what do you think?
That one I don't know really much about either.
All right, we'll go to John McElroy because John McElroy loves that car.
Man, Vasilash knows so much about what we like.
Yeah.
But hey, look, this is another one that I'm dying to get into because this could be the first real serious, the first real serious competition that Tesla has. And in fact, Elon Musk has taken some pot shots at the company, and saying, the chief engineer Peter Rawlinson, he was never the chief engineer on the Tesla Model S. Where in fact we know that he was. So, I mean, the fact that Elon figures he's got to diss this company tells me he feels that they might be putting a little bit of pressure on them. But Lucid has got to knock it out of the park. I mean, it is going to be so difficult for them to break into the auto industry, number one, and a premium electric vehicle going up against the likes of Audi and Mercedes and Cadillac and the like. It's going to be really, really difficult for this company to survive. So from the get-go, from the first one that rolls into a customer's hands, this thing has got to just dazzle people, and the word of mouth has got to be spectacular, because anything short of that, and they're going to be on a very short leash when it comes to survival.
I think it's gorgeous. I think it's beautiful. I think when people see that vehicle and they go, oh my God, what is that? And then they hear all the specs of this thing, they're just going to be like, where do I sign up? Unfortunately.
Well, and that's the other question. Where do you sign up? I mean, where do you go buy these things, and where do you get them serviced? I mean, look at the struggles that Tesla has in that regard. And, you know, how's Lucid or Faraday Future or Karma or, you know, even Polestar going to get this distribution going?
I think Lucid has set up some salons, as it were. So you go in and perhaps have a cappuccino and walk around and look at this thing and then just sign on the dotted line. I think it's a beautiful car. All right. We're going to move on. The Mitsubishi Outlander. I think it's great. I was just
it's
in
a
one
Nissan Rogue with a different name and a different look, and it's I've been in it briefly, not long term, for a day-long program, and it was very good, very impressive, big improvement over the old one.
I think it could be, you know, a much needed hit for Mitsubishi, and it's nice to see the Nissan, you know, the Nissan investment paying off for them. So it's good. It's good because this is a brand where, you know, in the past they've made some impressive cars, but they haven't done anything terribly noteworthy besides offer really affordable vehicles. You know, that's about it. That's all they've had going for them.
Yeah, I didn't drive it. We did just have it come through the Autoline garage. Sean drove it. He was very impressed with it. He thought it was really good. To your point, Gary Witzenberg, he said, you know, you can tell that it's a Rogue underneath. I remember the prior generation felt like an old vehicle. I mean, I'm not going to say that it was clunky, but it just did not feel modern. This new one apparently changes all that. I question the front end styling. To me, it looks a little bit goofy. Maybe some people are going to be attracted to that, and probably, or maybe not probably, Mitsubishi's got to be a standout. It's a challenger right now because its sales have shrunk so much that it's going to rely on this. And what's the other one? The Crossport. They just redid that one as well. Those should be two models in the lineup that are really going to help Mitsubishi.
I just think that, you know, it's a Rogue underneath. That's inside baseball. People don't know. It's the same way people don't know that the Envision's made in China. You know, people certainly don't know the underpinnings of the Outlander. And I think that if they can find a Mitsubishi dealer, which is not an easy thing to do, they may be impressed with the packaging of this vehicle. I mean, I think the interior execution. One of the things I really like is the, you know, if you look at the fonts that they use on their instruments, I mean, it's just like, this is really, really well done. Somebody is paying attention to that. I mean, I get into some cars that have, you know, $70,000 stickers, and I look at the interfaces, and I'm like, who the hell designed these things? Some kid with a crayon? I mean, these guys did a great job. But I messed up the alphabet here. We missed Kia Carnival, the minivan. Jenny, take it away.
It's the goofiest name. I'm sorry, it's goofy name, but you know, it's a replacement for the Sedona. It's getting a lot of buzz. We're seeing a ton of traffic come into our Carnival coverage over at cars.com. So it's a little surprising that this minivan is sort of reigniting this category. Some of the features that, you know, people are calling out are features that you can find in their competitors, right? So the screen with the games already in the back for the rear seat occupants, that's in the Chrysler Pacifica. The lounge, optional lounge seats that you can get in the Carnival, You could get that in the Toyota Sienna. So, but it's taking a lot of these little pieces and putting it all into one package. So we'll see if the sales follow the interest. I think that's the big question.
They're trying to position it, though, as not a minivan. It's a sport activity vehicle, which didn't Nissan do one of those decades ago?
BMW.
Yeah, SAV. But it is a minivan, but it's trying not to look like one, and it's trying not to be perceived as one for reasons we all understand.
But minivans are great.
Yes,
I
I know.
If you've got a family, there is nothing better for sort of just making life easier on you as a parent. Minivans are fantastic. It's too bad there's such stigma around them. I'm a huge fan of them. I don't own one, but I'm a huge fan of them.
Jenny, I'm with you. When our kids were growing up, we went through a number of minivans. I loved them. They're so practical. They're so efficient. To your point about the Carnival, why'd they drop the Sedona name? I mean, as you guys know, it takes a couple of $100 million of advertising to establish a brand name in the marketplace. And the only reason that you walk away from it is if there was something bad with the name. So I'm guessing there was something bad with the Sedona name, that it had acquired some sort of negative image and they felt they had to reinvent it. I'm just guessing on that. I don't know it for a fact. It is interesting, to your point, Gary Witzenberg, it does look more SUV-ish than minivan. But to your point, too, anybody who's tried to do the minivan that's not a minivan has failed miserably in the marketplace. And while it's still early in terms of sales, the sales of the Carnival are minuscule. I mean, I think it's only been in the market now for 2 months. I mean, in showrooms. But I want to say last month, the sales were just over a little over 4,000 units compared to the Sienna that led the market at 33,000 units. So Kia's got a long way to go. And you're right, Jenny. I mean, the media reaction to this vehicle has been very, very positive. So hopefully for Kia's sake, that translates into sales.
And one note on the name. One note on the name. The Sedona was called the Carnival globally. So this is just aligning the naming.
Okay. But even so, I mean, look at the price that Nissan paid dropping the Datsun name. You know, it's once you establish a name in the public's mind, stick to it. It's so hard to change.
But the Sedona is a minivan, so they have to get away from the name, I think, for that reason.
Maybe I'm telling you, the hardest thing to change is public perception.
Well, so John, to your point, according to Kia, the Carnival wears a bold and boxy appearance and conveys the visual language found on the brand's recent and highly successful lines of rugged utility vehicles, Telluride, Sorento, and Seltos. So that's very deliberate.
I'm telling you, I see styling characteristics of the Suburban in that.
And sort of undercutting what I said previously about nobody cares what the platform is, I do find this odd that Kia does point out it's on the all new third generation N3 platform as the capable Sorento and sporty K5. So do you really want to say your minivan is based on, what the car formerly known as the Optima? Seems odd.
Thank goodness nobody cares.
That's right. All right. So we'll jump
Speaking of going away from good names, why did they dump Optima? That's a great name.
Yeah.
K5. Well.
All right. Mitsubishi Outlander, Nissan Pathfinder. Anybody? Pathfinder?
I have not been in that one.
All right. So
no, I don't know anything about that one.
All right.
It looks good.
It does. It looks tricky.
I sat through an online presentation, haven't driven it yet, but I was impressed by the feature and the appearance of it. It looks like it'll be a hit, but I guess we'll wait and see until we get in it.
All right. Nissan Frontier. So finally, all these years later, they're saying, you know what? We need to redo the midsize pickup truck.
Yeah.
Now, I think in terms of visual cues, I think the front end of that is fantastic. I think it is the best looking truck in that category right now. Again, I haven't driven it, but I just think it looked great. Anybody else got anything they want to say about it?
that category is going to be heating up. So, you got to wonder if they're redesigning this at the right minute. It's taken years and years that it's looked the same. So this redesign is long overdue. And they've not had the best of luck with the Titan pickup trucks. So as far as sales goes, so it'll be interesting to see if they are able to push the Frontier a little bit more with consumers.
Yeah, I'll say this, man, was that truck old.
Yeah.
It's about time that they redesigned it. Having said that, and this is true of any automaker, when you build the same thing again and again and again, year after year after year, the quality gets really good. I mean, the suppliers, the line work, everybody can do this in their sleep, and the quality really goes up. And another thing, because it was so old, they were very price competitive. And so sales have held up relatively well because it had good image in the field because of its robust quality, and the price was right. So if they don't get too greedy and try to jack the price up, and if the truck's good, I mean, it's a segment that they're competitive in. Unlike the Titan, to your point, Jenny.
Long overdue and much needed, though. Total new vehicle.
All right, and because we haven't had enough pickup trucks yet, the Rivian Rt1. Okay, so this is an electric. They're saying at launch, the launch version will have 300 mile plus range. Then it'll go to 400 plus mile range, and then there'll be 250 mile plus range. The launch model can tow up to 11,000 pounds, which is pretty good. 54-inch bed, John, so you can get your mountain bike in the back of this thing. Just want you to know when you get that. And if you have the tailgate down, it's 83.6 inches. And this is what I didn't know. And I mean, everybody talks about Rivian electric truck. They have something, the Rivian Driver Plus, which can, and now I'm making air quotes for those who are not watching me, automatically steer, adjust speed, and change lanes at your command standard. 11 cameras, 5 radars, 12 ultrasonic sensors. Okay, and so the launch edition will be about $75,000. This seems like an amazing package. Gary Wittenberg, tell us why.
Why? Well, I knew you were going to call on me. I know absolutely nothing about that vehicle. I generally don't research and look into stuff that's still way out there, and I guess it's coming, but I'm clueless. So move on.
Anybody else?
I will say I know, unlike as we were talking about with some of the other more boutique EVs that are coming, Rivian is putting showrooms or salons, whatever we want to call them now, into cities around the country. So they're looking at their infrastructure and how they're going to reach consumers. But it'll be interesting to see just how this drives, right? All that towing capability, but what does it do to my battery capacity if I'm towing something that heavy? Those are the things that I wonder about, right? Great, I can tow. How long can I tow?
Jenny, you can get vegan leather seating in this thing. You don't care, okay?
So pleather?
I'll say this about Rivian. This is another vehicle I'm dying to get into to see how good it is, and I expect it to be very good. Rivian is one of the few startups that I think is going to survive. I think the rest of them are going to go belly up, but it's got some impressive investors behind it, like Ford and Amazon, for example. Also, it's not doing the SPAC thing. SPACs have been so crazy where you can go out and raise a whole bunch of money very quickly. In fact, they're not even doing an IPO. They're just raising money the old-fashioned way. They're going out and getting billions from investors. And they've got some pretty serious people on their staff. I mean, from a design and engineering standpoint, they really know what they're doing. So I really look forward to getting a chance to drive that truck when it comes out.
So I wish I'd have recorded myself just from a minute ago. Because we haven't had enough pickup trucks, the Tesla Cybertruck is supposed to come out this year.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's going to come out. I think it goes into production. We just did a report on this. That's why it's fresh in my mind. I want to say it goes into production March of next year at the Texas Terrafactory. They're not calling it a Gigafactory. They're calling it a Terrafactory.
I will say the Rivian looks pretty cool. I do remember that. The Tesla, well, jury's out on that design.
Okay. Theoretically, there's supposed to be a new Tundra this year.
Theoretically.
We did a show. Remember when the last generation came out, John? We had Mike Swears, the chief engineer, on that, and good guy who's got a farm in central Michigan, and I mean, it's just like all the boxes were checked on that thing. We were talking before about the Titan not doing very well. I mean, this is a mystery to me. Why does the Tundra not do as well?
Because the F-150, the Silverado, and the Ram are so damn good, and their buyers are so damn loyal. It's just hard to break in. Toyota's done a whale of a job, as you guys know, with the Tacoma. They dominate that segment. So, and Toyota plays the long game. And I think long game wise, they hope to translate more and more of those Tacoma buyers into Tundras for those who are looking to go up in size. But yeah, it's hard to go after the Detroit 3 pickups. No one's done it.
Okay, so here's a non-pickup truck and a car, and very limited in terms of volume. The Toyota Mirai fuel cell is new this year. Jenny's shaking her head. I just want to know, I want the audience who's listening to this.
Isn't that California only? Isn't that California only? Yeah. So
probably, because where else can you get hydrogen? And it's not even very obtainable there, from what I read, from the few people who actually drive fuel cell hydrogen powered vehicles. But yes, it's very interesting in many ways. 30% increase in range. They give you $15,000 worth of hydrogen free if you can find it. That's
better than that plug-in deal from the Bolt.
Yeah. And it looks really good, unlike, subjectively to me, unlike the first one. The first generation was very strange. This one, and I think, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they say it's based on the Lexus LS platform, right? It's a rear drive.
It certainly has that styling, that really long, snout.
It is. It's based on the Lexus LS platform, rear drive, where the other one was a smaller front drive platform. So they say it'll drive really well in terms of handling and ride and everything else. But where do you get the fuel, and how are you standing in line for it if you do get somewhere where they have it?
Gary, if you live on the East Coast and you have a gasoline car, you're in line. So just,
Well, today.
Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. All right. So we're nearing the end. We only have 3 more vehicles. 3, count them. Okay. And turns out all 3 of them are crossovers. Okay. Volkswagen ID4 electric vehicle and the forthcoming Volkswagen Taos. So who wants to talk about either of those? Nobody.
Wait, Volkswagen ID4?
Correct.
Yeah.
I'll talk about that one.
All right.
So that one's really an interesting one because it's, when Volkswagen was talking about it to automotive journalists, they were positioning it against gas-powered compact SUVs, even though it's an EV. When you get into it, it looks like a compact SUV. It's got the great legroom, that you find in some giant cargo area. What kind of throws it off for me is driving it. The ride feels unsettled if you go over railroad tracks, right? You're feeling that on all 4 wheels, and it takes a while for the car to sort of connect again with the road. The capacitive touch buttons are a pain to use. It looks cool, but when you're trying to drive and do some quick change your screen to make an adjustment in the car, I accidentally, as I was driving, turned on the hazard lights while I'm driving, and I was trying to adjust something really simple. I couldn't get it to work. So there's a couple little hiccups, but overall it's a pretty impressive vehicle. And I think for people looking for a way to get into EVs, but still want a lot of that functionality that you find in a compact SUV, it will fit the bill.
All right, Jenny, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
The capacitive buttons or the true touchpad interface?
Ooh. Do I get the capacitive buttons with the voice control in the ID4? Because that was my hack. If I can have the voice control, I'll take the capacitive buttons. That touchpad, though, is really hard to use in the Acura. It's really hard.
I couldn't let that one go.
That is a $40,000 base price vehicle. They give you 3 years of fast charging, supposedly, with Electrify America at no additional cost. And it's on the negative side, its EPA estimated range is only about 250, which is okay, but kind of 300 plus is where we are mostly with BEVs these days to be competitive.
All right, Gary.
I think, isn't that an 80 kilowatt hour battery too?
82, yeah.
And so for that range with that battery, not impressive. That's about the same range as a Chevy Bolt, admittedly a smaller vehicle, but with a 20 kilowatt hour smaller battery as well.
Right. They imply, I think, in what I'm reading, that there might be a bigger battery, bigger range version coming, because they say this is the 82 kilowatt version. But maybe they get up to 300. But again, when you add battery, you add a lot of weight, you add a lot of cost. And of course, the bigger your battery, the longer it takes to recharge it. So, you know, there's
that free recharging though, Gary. Just keep that in mind.
Fast recharging. All
right, Jenny. So when I drove the vehicle, the thing that struck me about it is that this is a car. This is just a normal car that a normal person could get in and drive, and it doesn't say, "Hey, look at me! I'm an electric car. I have this this whizzy technology." Even though it has some very clever things, like you don't have a button or anything to push. You just put it in gear and you start driving, assuming you have the key fob with you. I was very impressed about that. We're getting way long here. Anybody want to? I don't know about the Taos. It's a small crossover vehicle that will be newly introduced. Jenny, do you have any insights onto this?
Subcompact. It's back to that subcompact category. VW is trying to get into it, and I mean, I'm optimistic based on how well they've done with the Tiguan and the VW Atlas, which frankly, the VW Atlas is probably my favorite 3-row SUV out there, just from a drivability and great use of space. So hopefully we see the learnings that they had from those larger vehicles translate to the small one.
Yeah, real quick here. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Gary.
I was going to say it comes in under the Tiguan, but it's roughly the same size as the ID4, is it not? So we have electric and gas, about the same size vehicles in the same showroom.
Ooh, is it the same size? I don't think I realized that. Nice.
Yeah, what caught my attention is they're talking a $24,000 base price for the Taos, which is pretty aggressive. And if I'm remembering right, I think it's rated at 33 miles to the gallon, which is mighty competitive for that segment. So that's another one on my list of must drives for the year.
Right.
Or is it?
It's a long list.
Hey, there's a lot of
going to be busy.
All right. We're going to the last one. The very, very last one. We're going to talk about the Volvo C40 Recharge. Electric vehicle. They're claiming this is the first Volvo that is specifically designed as an EV. And oh, by the way, you buy it online. Estimated range. Yeah. Gary, wait for it. 210 miles. You just fell out of your seat, I know.
No, I'm pretty well tied in, but online only, that troubles me a little bit. That really puts the dealers out, and I think Volvo's headed in that direction for everything, are they not? To do away with dealers, they've said that, I think. But also, how different is that from the XC40? Is it kind of the same vehicle with a different roof line? I don't know yet.
I don't know either. I think it's got more of a little bit of a swoop in the back, but yeah. And as far as the dealers, I think Volvo is hoping that the dealers will focus on the service side of things, which, as we know, is a really lucrative side of their business. But what does that model do? How does that affect the dealership? How does that affect walk-ins and things like that? So it's going to be interesting to watch what happens with that, and if they actually stick with it in a few years.
And all I can tell you is I like the XC40 Recharge a lot. Mm-hmm. So if this one is a true EV, not just a conversion from an internal combustion engine, then they've got something on their hands. But Volvo's been pretty good at pushing EVs, and isn't it by 2025 or something? They say they're going to be all electric, or am I confusing that with somebody else that said they're going to be all electric?
Was
They'll
it
be
all
all
electrified? Electrified, I think that's the
Okay.
thing.
Okay.
So hybrids and battery electric.
Okay.
All right.
They'll still have a gas engine in there with a hybrid.
Okay, so we've exhausted the list. We did have a question from a viewer AC Malmet, who wants to know, are gasoline cars going away? John McElroy, you start.
Yeah, they're going away, but not for several decades.
Yeah. Not in our lifetimes.
Jenny, tell the reason.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's
just
certainly,
explain.
they're just putting all the infrastructure in to really make that, to really move over to gasoline. So, think about it, like 5 years ago, automakers maybe had no EVs or one EV. And my guess is in 20, 30 years, it'll be the opposite, right? Maybe they have maybe they still have a gas powered Corvette as well as an EV version, right? They pick some sort of halo car that they offer as something with gas, but it's going to be, they're going away. They're going away like dinosaurs.
Well, the infrastructure's got to support all EVs, and I don't know when that's ever going to happen. And also, I just read a report earlier today that said 1 in 5 EV owners have gone back to gas with their next vehicle rather than staying with EVs, 20%. Why? The biggest issue is recharge time, which it would be with me. Not just range, but the time it takes in the bigger, like as I said earlier, the bigger battery you have, the longer it takes. And yeah, you can get DC fast charge, but how available is that? And those charger units are really expensive. But even with 240, it takes a long time, and you can fill up a car with gas in 3, 4, 5 minutes, and you're on your way. So I think that's the biggest issue going forward.
Yeah, and then what about infrastructure within cities? So I live in Chicago. I don't have a garage. I park in an alley, basically. I have a parking spot, and I would love to get an EV, but how in the world do I install a charger? So those are some serious questions that need to be tackled. It seems like the current administration is starting to look into them. So we'll see where things go in the next couple of years.
Gary, I just want to make it clear though, when you have that Hummer EV, you're going to be able to get 100 miles charge in 10 minutes. So that'll take care of you.
Okay, but I'd rather have 300 miles in 2 minutes.
Nah, come on. Be that way. All right.
I think the ultimate compromise, by the way, is the extended range electric, like the Volt and the Cadillac ELR, which I just happened to buy one, 2014. That's the Cadillac luxury version of the Volt with a V, that was so popular it sold almost 2,900 vehicles over 2 model years. But
and it was so popular that the whole EREV thing is gone. General Motors makes none of them.
Right, because they're too costly. I mean, they lost money on every Volt, and that's why the ELR was $75,000. So it's one reason almost nobody bought one, because they were trying to actually make it profitable. So they're not doing, as you know, GM's not even doing hybrids going forward because there's so much cost involved versus what you can charge for it, that they're money losers in their mind. And I think for the extended range, that was definitely true. I love extended range, but there is one coming back. The Mazda.
Really?
Mazda's going to have a rotary engine extended range, they say, to go along as a version of the vehicle we haven't talked about, the MX-30 electric. So I don't mean to extend our time any further, but all of that.
We'll save that one for another show.
Yeah. But with the ELR, I can run on gas or electric, depending on, which is available. So, it's a beautiful looking little car.
All right, that's it. And it's just, I know you guys are sad that the Sasquatch package was talked early about in the show, and everything from there was just not as interesting. But anyway, so John, back to you.
Real good. Jenny and Gary Witzenberg, thanks so much for coming on the show with us.
Thanks for having me.
Okay.
All right.
See you all next week.
Okay. Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye all.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey, and by Borg Warner, propulsion solutions that support a clean, energy-efficient world.
Visit our website, Autoline.tv, where you can watch us live Thursday afternoons. Get your daily fix with Autoline Daily and in-depth analysis and interviews with Autoline This Week. There's all that and much more at Autoline.tv.